So, welcome everyone to the very first Legacy interview. This is a running series of interviews by Legacy from the Legacy magazine, MDI's Legacy magazine, which focuses on success for men and and what they need to do, where they need to go, and how they need to be for their own success and the results that they want to achieve in their life. So, the theme for February of 2021 is the comeback story. And we have a great guest today. His name is Joe Sigurdson. He is the co-founder of the Boys to Men Mentoring Network. It's a nonprofit organization supporting boys who are challenged in today's society. He's been active in the Mankind Project, doing interpersonal work for the past 27 years. His experience in both those programs has given him the insight what he believes is lacking in our society, especially teenage boys. So he's worked with thousands of men and boys around the world. And with 33 centers across the globe, the vision of Boys to Men is to create communities of men who teach, support, mentor, and encourage boys to become compassionate and accountable men. So welcome, Joe. Welcome to the first Legacy interview. How are you?
I'm good, Jim. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
So can you tell us about the purpose and the success for Boys to Men, the group that you co-founded?
Yeah. So the purpose is to give young men, a sounding board for their lives. Especially fatherless boys. Like there's a lot of guys running around, and the only voice they have is the one in their head, and that one's out to get a lot of us. And so we're an in-school group mentoring program. We bring in teams of mentors every week to sit in circles with some young men that are struggling. The school usually identifies the first group of guys, and they're guys that may have some gang activity or some drug activity or are struggling emotionally or academically. And we sit in circles with these guys and we talk about what happened to us. The men kind of set the bar for sharing and authenticity, and we talk about the choices we've made, the price we paid, how we felt about ourselves, what we wished we had done different, or what we wish was available that wasn't there, and then avail ourselves to be that resource for the boys. And when the boys resonate with the men's truth and authenticity, and they feel safe enough, and sometimes it'll take 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks of just the men sharing. At some point, the boys, will take a risk and say, I'm doing that. I'm doing that now, and they talk about, the choices they're making and the price they pay and how they feel about themselves. And then Boys to Men is there to say, well, is this what you want? And help them identify what they really want and ask them, what are they willing to do different to get that? And when they make a new choice, we're there to apply, encouragement, support, and accountability to help them become the good men they all want to be.
Yeah, it's perfect. Yeah, I've been a part of the Boys to Men for about 4 years, and it is an amazing program, and we know the need is there. And with 33 centers across the globe, you're obviously fulfilling a need. Now, I do want to get to your particular success story. So can you give us a little bit or comeback story, excuse me. Can you give a little background about your childhood or maybe anything that laid the groundwork of creating the path that you've created?
Yeah. My life was a bit of a perfect storm to put me in a place where I am today. I had these magnificent parents, and they were. My dad spent his life in corrections. My dad spent his life in prison reform, and he was a social activist. And my mom and dad were both juvenile probation officers. That's how they met, and our house was always a safe haven for runaways and for kids that were struggling. And, it was kind of ingrained. And my dad, he he taught at USC. He taught criminal justice administration and sociology. And he ran a lot of diversionary programs in the 60s, the Great Society. And he set up programs in Torrance and in Crenshaw District, Inglewood, around LA, Santa Monica, giving kids an outlet, so that they'd stay out of trouble. He was also the former executive director of Father Flanagan's Boys Town in Omaha, Nebraska. So this was kind of the culture I was raised in. And then I went from boy to man very early. I fell in love with my older sister's best friend, and I've known my wife since I was 10 years old. And when I was 18, she was 22, and she had a 2-year-old child, and we had grown up together, and I just loved her. And you know, over one Christmas vacation, we kind of fell for each other, and I married her, and I adopted Erica, and I went from boy to man, like in 6 months. Like I graduated from high school in June, and in December of 1976, I became a father and a husband, and you know, and in that struggle, you know, I worked in the man's world. I got a union job running a printing press, and everybody was older, and I didn't really fit in, and I wanted to fit in, and they all drank, and I thought if I drank with them, I'd fit in, and so I did, and then that led to a whole bunch of bad decisions, and in short order, I was alcohol dependent, and I had become a kind of a dope addict, and then I couldn't afford it, so I became a dope dealer, and then I became kind of a nefarious criminal, and for about 10 years, I committed felonies every day, and I hated myself, and I was losing my family and my career and my wife, and I ended up at the doorsteps of Alcoholics Anonymous, and there I met a bunch of guys that had done the same stuff I had done, and they really didn't care about my story. They just wanted to know what was I going to do to clean up my mess, and how was I going to move forward. And they suggested I do these steps, and they took me through the steps. And then shortly after that,
so I want to, excuse
go
me,
ahead.
I just wanted to follow the comeback story here, because I mean, it's already an incredible story. So the upbringing, you had the parents there, but you still found a way to fall. You know, a comeback story always has some kind of fall.
Yeah.
And so you started to talk about it a little bit with the, alcohol and the crime.
Yeah.
Can you paint a picture, because this is a comeback story? Can you paint a picture of a very low time in your life? You might have already started to, but can you just, for the audience, can you just paint the picture of
Yeah.
what maybe one of the lowest times?
Yeah. I think it was doing a dope deal in my living room with Mexican mafia. And I had set up the deal, and the guy that wanted I was the go-between guy, and it was a friend of mine that wanted me to score a couple of pounds, and he did not show up, and he did not have the money. And so I had these Mexican mafia gentlemen in my living room with a couple of pounds of weed, and all they wanted was the $1,600 and leaving. And I was making small talk. I was mixing gin and tonic. I was playing the piano and singing Billy Joel for them. And they were unamused, and I was scared shitless. And then I'm also sitting there, and I got pictures of my family on the mantle. They know where I live. They know I've got a wife and 2 kids. And my friend showed up. We got the deal done. They left, and I had a psychotic episode, total meltdown. What am I doing? What have I become? What is going to happen to my family? What kind of I just didn't even I thought I was a monster. I didn't even recognize myself, and I wanted to kill my best friend for like it was his fault, and that was kind of like a real low, like that said, dude, you were not cut out for this shit. You've got to knock it off.
Right. So we're going to identify. Yeah. Thanks for painting that picture, because that was like, oh my Lord, who would want to be in that situation? And it shows you that some of the results that we end up in, or some places we end up in our lives, from certain choices that we've made along the way. Can you identify maybe 2 or 3 mental choices or physical choices you've made along the way early on that led you to this place where you didn't want to be?
Well, like I was a young guy. you know, and I wanted to fit in. And I was hanging with guys that were 10 years, at least 10 years older than me. I was 18, 19 years old. And these guys, these were journeyman pressmen. I was working in a union printing shop out in Santee, and I wanted to be a part of those guys. And I was working swing shift. I was working nights, and I kind of had a, you know, my wife was a teacher and she was working during the day and the kids were in school. And so I kind of had I was kind of isolated, you know? And so the choices I made, you know, and also, you know, look, alcoholism runs in my family, you know, like my grandfather was alcoholic, my mom and my dad were probably both alcoholic, you know, God rest their souls. But, you know, you know, and so I think, you know, alcoholism is an allergy of the body and an obsession of the mind. And like, so once I would trigger, it turns out I'm allergic to alcohol, you know, so once I would start, I couldn't stop, you know, and that became very apparent very quickly, because I had never drank until I went to work there, you know. Drinking was not part of my deal. I was an athlete. I was disciplined. I was, you know, and so one of the choices was to want to fit in and start drinking, and that turns out I'm allergic to alcohol, and that led to alcoholism. And then, you know, in that, you know, obsession of the mind, like one's not enough and one's too many and 1,000's not enough kind of mentality, you know, everything led to, you know, one choice led to another bad choice, led to another bad choice. And, you know, I don't know, man, it's a progressive disease. And like from the time I was like 19 to 25, by the time I was 25, you know, I was smoking an ounce a week. I was doing an 8-ball of Crystal a week. I was drinking a case of beer a day. I was like completely out of control. And those 3 years between 25 and 28, I don't know how I stayed employed. I don't know how I stayed married. I don't know how anything kept together, because I was just oblivious. I was in oblivion.
Right. So it
Yeah.
sounds like you, without really identifying like a choice that you made in life, it was something that you, like a treadmill or something you got on, and it just kind of took you, and almost to a point where you weren't even like aware of what was happening. So
It was
at the time,
progressive. It
it's
was,
progressive.
you know, in the big book, it's cunning, baffling, and powerful, you know, which describes my disease
I got it.
perfectly.
So you got to a point though in your life where you're like, wait a minute, maybe not how did I get here, but how do I get out of here? This is
Yeah,
not the
right.
life I want.
Yeah.
What, when you got to that point, that dark point for the comeback story, what steps did you, what big steps did you take to start the comeback?
Okay. So like there, without getting into the details of the felony hit and run, uh, I knew I had a problem. And it was suggested to me by my older sister, who was in AA, that I should probably go to an AA meeting. And my dad, who had been like getting me out of trouble and bailing me out, and said, yes, that's a great idea. I'll go with you. And, you know, when I went to my first AA meeting and I was hearing the level of, you know, honesty, transparency, authenticity, vulnerability, and they were all telling my story. I actually thought somebody had been following me around, going, wait, whoa. How do you know about this? But it was just them. We're not that unique. You know, this insidious disease affects us all very similarly. You know, and you know, I just remember feeling like, okay, these are my people. This is where I belong. And, you know, and in that, you know, I found a men's meeting, which was critical, you know, because there was no, you know, there was like real transparency there. And there was some fierce, hard, you know, accountability and love that, that, you know, you couldn't bullshit these guys. You know, a lot of these guys with 25, 30 years of sobriety saw right through whatever con game I wanted to run on them, and just, you know, pulled the sheets and said, no, kid, listen, you're so full of shit right now. Listen to yourself, you know, and you know, that's
Yeah.
Yeah, once I got involved, just as obsessed as I was about drinking and using, I became equally obsessed about service and helping the other the alcoholic who still suffers. I mean, that's our primary purpose, is to help the alcoholic who still suffers. And so, I took commitments. I answered phones at the AA Central office every week for 5 years. I 12-step guys. I went and met guys in motel rooms, pulled them off the street, brought them into my home, drove my wife crazy. I took commitments in meetings. I cleaned ashtrays, made coffee, picked up the donuts. I did. I became. The recovery is service, unity, and recovery. That's the triangle. That's the AA triangle. And so service became a big part of my recovery, and part of that is, when I'm serving others, I can't worry about myself because I'm seeing people in need all the time. And it's also was a way to balancing out, the the balance sheet on the universe, because I had done so much horrible stuff. I had to do some good stuff to get back in integrity with the planet, and with God. And so service became a big part of who I became. And building community. AA is a hell of a community. All my friends are alcoholics. All my surf buddies are alcoholics. All my golf buddies are alcoholics. The community of AA is like. And so I learned something about how to build recovery. I learned something about how to listen and not tell people what to do, but tell them what I did, share my experience, strength, and hope. And all of that translates with young men really well,
Yes,
So,
exactly. So
so
I wanted to mention, excuse me, you talk about being in a men's circle where you could like hear some brutal truths. A lot of our men who are be watching this and MDI, they would really relate to that. That
yeah,
here's a circle where and not that it doesn't happen, maybe in other dynamics, demographics, but there's something about what happens when men get together and they're dedicated to the truth and they don't mind, and they want you not to hold back. So
right.
that is a huge step. Thanks for mentioning that.
Yeah.
I wanted to see if I could go to this place of any belief systems or any mindsets that you already had in place that would allow for a comeback. Because
Yeah.
there's men, there's humans that have been alcoholics that have spiraled and they've fallen and they've never really come back. But there's
Yeah.
something about your mindset or belief systems or something that
I think
allowed for the comeback.
Yeah, I think it was the foundation that my parents put in me around kindness, around generosity, around, service to community. They, they did all that stuff. I had a foundation I knew what it was to be a good person. Okay. And I knew that I was out of bounds with my core values, and I actually had a foundation to return to, whereas a lot of alcoholics, they don't have any fundamentals. They don't have any foundation. They may have been raised in an abusive home or an abandoned, no father, abandoned, and they actually have to create a foundation for themselves to stand on. And we see that with a lot of our boys too. They come into Boys to Men to create their own foundation to allow them to stand on.
That's great. In fact, what I understood when you were talking is that you shifted your energy, your focus, your passion from this one lifestyle to another lifestyle where you were all about service and support, and so what came of that ultimately was Boys to Men. Is that right? That ended up. So can you describe now? Well, describe any steps you took in your comeback story around creating Boys to Men.
Yeah.
And then describe the impact now.
Yeah.
That's been happening.
Well, so part of my recovery journey was, there was a lot of guys here in San Diego doing the New Warrior Training Adventure, through the Mankind Project. And, and there was a real congruency with AA fourth and fifth step work, which is a searching and fearless moral inventory of ourselves and admitting to God, to ourselves, and another human being, the exact nature of our wrongs. Well, that kind of happens on an a New Warrior Training Adventure weekend. And so I did this weekend, and it was more physical and experiential than it was like writing and talking. And but it got me. It really increased my, my levels of a self-awareness, my impact on other people, and my own accountability around that, and integrity. And when I came off that weekend, I thought, man, this was great. Could have used this at 14, not almost 40, And and then as it turned out, my son was 13, 14 when I did it, when I did the New Warrior training. And then some of the things that I learned in that experience, I started applying to him and his friends. And I got to tell you, once I got sober, one of the first things I did was I became my son's little league baseball coach, and he was 8 years old, and I coached his little league team, and after that first practice, when I came home the next day, there were four boys at my house, and I was their coach, and they were Gabe's friend. And those four boys were at my house almost every day for the next 10 years because none of them had dads. Oh. So, and then I kind of became the neighborhood dad guy that, would pitch to both teams and play permanent quarterback on both sides. And this was pre-seatbelt laws, throw everybody's bikes and surfboards in the back of the pickup truck and take everybody to the bike trails or to the beach. And I was like in it, And in fact, my friends called me Disneyland Dad. And so when those guys started screwing up and they'd get in trouble, I'd get calls from their mom saying, would you please talk to him? He's failing English or history, or I caught him smoking weed, or I caught him, breaking into the liquor cabinet, or, whatever. These moms would call me and say, please talk to him. And so I started applying some of the stuff that I learned in the New Warrior community and in AA around honesty and integrity and accountability and taking responsibility for our actions and our thoughts and our behaviors. And then I was in a meeting of the Mankind Project in San Diego, and somebody brought in an article of then Governor Pete Wilson was looking to recruit 200,000 mentors by the year 2000. This was in 1996. And my dad was still alive, and my dad was involved in the Mankind Project. And now we're both sober in AA. And my dad's background was in corrections and in juvenile justice and Boys Town. And I said, Dad, you'd be perfect for this. And he said, well, listen, if anybody wants to get involved in creating a mentoring program, meet at Joe's on Tuesday night. And the following Tuesday, 8 men came to my house, and we started brainstorming what would a young man's rites of passage experience look like. We worked on it. And then I took these kids that I'd been mentoring since they were little kids. I said, hey, I want to try an experiment. Will you guys come up and let us experiment on you and do this thing called Boys to Men? And they said, yeah, Joe, whatever you want.
Wow, that's amazing. So I want to wrap it up pretty soon, but I do want the audience to hear a couple things. One is, because we're towards the, I'm a writer of like film, movies and things like that. So like the story, we had at the beginning of the story, childhood, and then a little bit later on, it's like, he's starting to make some choices, and now he's on this, downward trajectory. But then he hit that point, the low point, and then he made some new choices. And then look what, with his new life, he's like doing this great work, creating this, and it's all falling together, right? With his newfound focus. And now boys and men are coming towards him saying, yes, this is who you are, in a way. Can you give an impression of what, I know it's COVID time now, and it's like really challenging to obviously get together, but can you talk about the impact? You've had this comeback story. Now, what's the impact that's being felt now across the globe with all these different centers and the different work that's been done? What has been the positive impact from your comeback story?
Well, here's what I think everyone knows a young man that's struggling. Everyone knows that kid, and we have created an open source program that we have given away, that kind of, everything we've developed, all of our policies, procedures, manuals, curriculum, is all available. And men understand the calling that is out there for, especially, when we look at the outcomes of multi-generations of fatherless boys turning to men, becoming fathers, abandoning their children, who go from boy to man to father, abandoning their, we're like in our third generation. Like, divorce rates in the United States from 1940 to 1970 went from about like 7% to 50%, and the outcomes from all that are real. So I think that there's a universal need out there to bridge this gap and to give boys, some support, some role models, and a sounding board for their lives, so that they don't have just one voice in their head making all the decisions. They can bounce their stuff off of a group of guys. They can share their experience, strength, and hope, and help make better decision-making process for them, and create stronger communities. They see, when these guys get turned around, they have an effect on their friends, and then they also go home and they have effect on their little brothers and their little sisters, and then their moms and their dads see them differently. And there's healing that goes on with this transformation, Jim.
Yeah.
And so I think everybody kind of understands that conceptually, but then when you get to witness it and experience it and hear it from the boys, hear it from the parents, from the teachers, from the administrators, this thing works.
Yeah.
Then
Definitely.
sounds like we got something.
Yeah, definitely. I've been there in those circles. I've seen the transformations. I've been on a couple of the weekends. Have you? How many young boys are we talking about by now after all these years?
Oh gosh, I don't know.
I mean,
10,000.
Yeah. So thousands and thousands.
Thousands and thousands.
Thousands and thousands. They're touching they're touching lives.
The ripple effect of that. Yes.
Right, and that is so needed right now. So I'm so glad you had your comeback story, so that this could all like be unfolded through through the different channels that's being created. So the last question I have has to do with kind of towards the end of the movie, when the comeback story is complete, Rocky's there or whoever's there at the end. What is the feeling? What is it? What is the feeling in you? Having seen this comeback story unfold through you, what is the feeling that you have seeing this impact and seeing how far you've come?
You'd think it'd be good, right? You'd think so,
It's your movie.
I mean, it is. What the enriching thing is, like, when I get to see the changes in the boys, and to think that if I had any part to do with their success, if anything I've said or anything I've done had anything to do with their transformation and their success, that is an unbelievable feeling. That is like super rich, and I'm experiencing it right now. And I'll just tell you briefly, there's a kid I've been working with since he was 13. He's now 18. And, he was in and out of gangs but he was one of these really resilient, but super smart, ambitious kids. And the world had more to offer him than he even understood. And anyway, he turned 18. He applied for a job with a biotech company. They hired him. He's flying around the country doing COVID testing. He's getting a per diem. He's being put up in hotels. He's getting paid a living wage. He's supporting himself. He's 18 years old. He just turned 18 in December. And he says, okay, I'm 18 now. I'm going out there. I'm getting a real job. He had been working at Del Taco and whatever. So now that he's working for a COVID place, he goes, Joe, what if I could get them to come to a Boys to Men event, test everybody, make it safe, and then you guys could go do a weekend, or go do a surf night, or go do a J group, and he's 18 and he's already coming full circle, wanting to help us out, leveraging what he's got going. I mean, that feels amazing. I got to tell you, Jim.
That's awesome. And since the audience is going to wonder, is there still an angst or something that doesn't feel good right now? Like, what is it? Because there's so much more work to do,
Yeah.
or is it, what
Well,
is it?
yeah, I think it's, it's like, how did I get here? I'm a blue collar printer. Like, I think there's like, so I'm a freaking fraud. Like, why are all these people listening to me? What the hell? There's still that insecure, guy that never went to college, that thought he should have gone to college, should have had this, should have done, and
Right.
God had another plan for me, and my life was really a perfect storm for this. I went from boy to man very early. I went into my dark period. I came out of that darkness. I was exposed to some tools, and I took my experience of having these wonderful parents, boy to man, alcoholism, recovery, mankind project, boys to men. I mean, it's a perfect storm to be doing what I'm doing, but I still got voices in my head that say I'm not good enough or I'm a fraud, or why should anyone listen to me?
Right. I think the term I've heard is the imposter syndrome. It's like, I'm an
Yeah,
imposter.
I get
Wait,
some of that.
I hope nobody finds out about who I
It,
really am. Of course, who we really are is bigger and brighter than we could ever imagine.
right, dude. Every Sunday night, I go to bed terrified, going, "What am I going to do Monday?"
I love it. Well, I want to thank you so much. I'm going to wrap it up here, but thank you so
Okay,
much for taking the time to tell your story. Let's just, if everyone tells their story, we'll all have comebacks. We'll all realize who we really are.
right.
Not imposters, but really great beings. They can tell the truth. They can circle up. They can be in our power, and actually in that support others in their empowerment and their enrichment. So thanks for your story. What is a website or a way to connect with you if anyone wants to do
Yeah,
that?
boystomen.org, boystomen.org. That's for San Diego. Boys to Men USA for everybody. We have a national organization, and we have a new center rollout team to help people that want to start Boys to Men centers. So boystomenusa.org or boystomen.org for San Diego.
All right, well, there you go. So thank you, audience, for listening to the story. This is our first legacy interview. We'll have more. And for now, we'll just say good day. Have a great one, and we'll talk to you soon. Thank you. Thanks,
Thanks,
Joe.
Jim.
Awesome.